A biting northern wind swept through the highest battlements of Winterfell on the eve when whisper and shadow began to weave a new tale. Snowdrifts gathered in crenellations like silent witnesses, muffling the racket of smiths hammering late into dusk and the rumble of wagons hauling casks from the gods' wood to the kitchens. Torches crackled in their brackets, casting restless orange halos on stone as fine, crystalline flakes spiraled across the courtyard, each one a tiny omen in the witchlight of approaching night. Within the ramparts, the castle hummed with uneasy purpose, a hush of anticipation that settled over banners and battlements alike. For though the Night King had been vanquished and his armies scattered to ice dust, the North yet learned the shape of peace in a land that had forgotten the word. Daenerys Stormborn, once breaker of chains beneath blazing Essosi suns, had traveled farther north than any dragon queen before her, and she felt every league tonight. She stood alone on the rampart above the great hall, her silver-gold hair unbraided and whipped about by the wind, those star-bright violet eyes fixed on the broad sweep of Winterfell's godswood. Snow speckled her lashes, carrying with it the faint smell of pine, smoke, and secrets older than memory. She listened, truly listened, to the castle, to the creak of timbers settling, to the distant clang of blacksmith iron, to the deep, thrumming heartbeat that pulsed somewhere below the yard. It was as if Winterfell itself breathed in time with the ancient trees whose roots writhed unseen through crypt and soil. Below her, in the courtyard, the red and black bulk of Drogon loomed. He lay curled like a vast cat by the inner well, wings half-furled, obsidian scales reflecting torchlight in jagged shards. His breath steamed from nostrils wide enough to swallow shields, and each exhalation warmed the air in a hazy shimmer. The men and women of the North had long since grown accustomed, or grown too weary, to flee from the monster's presence, but still they glanced sideways when they passed. Still they gave him a wide berth lest he stir that wrath they had witnessed in fire and fury on the long night's field. It was not wrath Daenerys saw on Drogon this eve. It was restlessness, some primal thrum beneath obsidian scales. She felt it echo through the slender tether of blood and braid that bound rider to dragon. He lifted his horned head, black eyes like night pools reflecting every torch in the yard, and in those eyes she sensed a question. There was something here, something new stirring under stone. The notion glimmered at the edge of thought like a memory half-dreamed, an ember waiting for the right breath to waken. Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, though few used the name, found her on the rampart. Footfalls soft, cloak of direwolf gray and Night's Watch black trailing small curls of frost from its hem. He came to stand beside her without a word. Mutual silence suited them better than speeches these days. Words had too often proven weapons as brutal as swords. He watched her, then Drogon, then the horizon fading from blue to indigo. The cold stung cheeks and lips, but Jon had lived entire lives in such cold. Restless? He asked finally, and she realized he meant the dragon and the queen alike. He smells something, she murmured. Something old. Something familiar. She tasted the word on her tongue as if it came from another mouth. Fire remembers fire, Jon. Even buried fire. He followed her gaze toward the distant maw of the crypts yawned open at the base of the first keep. Stone and bones down there. Stark bones. No warmth to rouse a dragon. Bones, she allowed, and other things that once were warm. Her eyes narrowed. Dragons slept there once. She stated it without certainty and yet with utter conviction, as if the truth was etching itself upon her with each gust of wind. Jon furrowed his brow, yet said nothing. He had faced sorcery and the dead. The idea of eggs under Winterfell's roots felt no stranger than the life he now led. Still, the crypts belonged to his fathers, and he measured any disturbance there as one might weigh a vow. If dragons' eggs rest under those stones, he said carefully, they've lain cold for centuries, maybe longer. Would they still quicken? Not alone, she answered. But Drogon's fire is not merely heat. It is life older than Valyria, a forge the world itself learned from. She felt the shiver that ran through him, whether of winter or wonder she could not tell. She touched his gloved hand. Come with me. They descended narrow stairways slick with frost, spiraling downward through passages carved when Bran the Builder still walked. The torches Jon carried guttered in drafts that smelled of earth and secrets. At each landing she felt the tug, something calling them deeper. Not voice or whisper, but a pull in the blood, in dragon and queen both. Beneath the great hall, they crossed into the main crypt entrance, where rows of stone kings and wardens watched over dust of bones. Jon lit wall sconces, and the carved faces of Starks flickered to life in wavering gold. Drogon's footfalls thundered behind them, stones quivering beneath the weight of living myth. Jon cast worried glances back. The vaulted ceiling arched high, yet even so, it seemed a miracle the dragon squeezed through. Drogon's wings brushed walls in a scrape that showered centuries of dust. But he followed, obedient to queen and to scent no human nose could catch. They passed statues of lords and ladies. Eddard Honorable, Lyanna in Bloom, Brandon Swift and Bold. Further, Ricard who burned, Cregan the Wolf, Lord Baron, on and on into ages lost. As they neared the oldest arches, the air changed, grew warmer, subtly, as if the stones themselves remembered sunlight. Daenerys paused before an arch where no statue stood, only rough-hewn wall. Cracks laced the stone like veins. Within those fissures faint crimson glowed, pulsing in time with something deeper. She knelt, brushed her fingertips across ancient mortar. Warmth bloomed beneath her palm, startling in the frigid crypt. The stone moaned, a low tremor that rattled teeth. Drogon exhaled a plume of red gold flame that licked the ceiling and rained sparks. Dust hissed. Jon stepped forward, sword hilt poised though unsheathed. Daenerys pressed closer, ear to stone. She could hear a heartbeat that was not her own nor dragon's. A dull, steady throb from beyond that wall. "Stand back," Jon warned, but she shook her head. Drogon lunged, jaws clenching the cracked stone as if it were ice. The dragon worried at the wall with raw power, claws ripping masonry, tail lashing statues into rubble. Jon dragged Daenerys away as flame gushed, melting limestone to glowing slag. Stone groaned, split, and fell in sheets until a hollow lay exposed. A chamber beyond chambers, untouched by torch since the world was young. Heat spilled forth, accompanied by a scent of brimstone and something metallic, like blood and forge smoke mixed. Within that secret hollow, half buried in slag and ash and hardened flows of basalt, rested three massive, mottled shapes, eggs, yet so large they dwarfed the ones Daenerys had burned on Khal Drogo's pyre in the Red Waste. The shells shimmered, one a deep midnight blue streaked with silver veins, another a ferric rust flecked in gold, and the third a pale jade shot through with white as if frozen storms spiraled beneath its surface. Jon released a slow breath. By the old gods! But Daenerys heard dragonfire singing in her ears, the roar of some cosmic wind that gusted through every scalded memory of Valyria. She stepped forward on trembling limbs. Drogon lowered his head, snout nuzzling the largest shell. Flame flickered between his teeth yet did not burst forth. Instead, warmth radiated like summer hearth, until frost on the egg's surface dripped in rivulets. A hairline crack appeared, then another, spider webbing outward with delicate snaps that echoed. Daenerys felt her heart rise into her throat. The chamber filled with soft growls, muffled screeches from within stone shells. "Not so fast," Jon cautioned, but his voice betrayed or rather than restraint. He tightened his grip on Longclaw though he did not raise the blade. The silver wolf's head pommel glittered in reflection of the embryo lights shimmering beneath shell. The crack widened, fracturing in a starburst. A talon punched through, black-scaled yet dusted with frost. The shell split along hidden seams, and steam poured from the opening as if the newborn creature's blood boiled. A head emerged, slender, elongated, with horns still soft, eyes milky white. It shrieked, "Hi, urgent!" And Drogon answered in a resonant roar that shook stalactites from the ceiling and made Jon stumble. Another shell shattered. A second dragon, this one the color of iron at dusk, forced its way free, wings still wet, membrane translucent enough that torchlight painted veins like rivers across leather. The third egg trembled but did not break. Daenerys reached, gentle as snowflake, and laid both palms upon the jade shell. She remembered how Khal Drogo's pyre seared her flesh and how the pain had felt like the world forging her anew. Now she embraced the warmth, coaxing with whispered Valyrian encouragement, ancient syllables swirling like embers on her breath. The third dragon answered her with trembling quiver. Cracks spiraled until shards sloughed away in chunks, revealing pale green scales beneath, softer than silk. It slithered free and collapsed into her arms, no larger than a mastiff, yet pulsing with furious vitality. She cradled it, marveling at its weight, at the soft hiss of breath through tiny nostrils. Jon knelt beside her. The iron-colored hatchling stumbled toward him, sniffing at his cloak. He reached out, and the creature licked frost from his glove, as a pup might. The first hatchling circled Drogon's foreclaw, squealing in excitement, and Drogon, great dread beast, lowered his horned head to nudge the fragile thing. 3 more, Daenerys whispered, tears streaking clean lines through the grime of ash on her cheeks. A second clutch born in the land of snow and stone. Jon's gaze flicked from dragons to queen. Firelight danced across his features. And raised beneath my father's graves, he murmured, as if unsure whether to feel triumph or dread. The North will have thoughts about that. The North will have to learn, she replied softly, as it has learned to kneel beside ghosts and giants. She cradled the jade hatchling, feeling its heartbeat hammer like a drum. These are children of ice and fire both. They belong to this land now as much as to me. Winter dragons, Jon said, wonder overriding the shadow of fear. Born in crypts where kings of winter lie, perhaps the old gods had a hand. Or perhaps dragons answer only to themselves, she said. Yet she thought of Bran's calm, distant eyes, of the 3-eyed raven's cryptic pronouncements. Threads of fate were weaving new patterns tonight, and she but walked them. Drogon flexed his wings, sending cascades of soot swirling. The vaulted ceiling groaned. Jon gestured quickly. We should get them out before the roof comes down. They ushered the hatchlings, 2 toddling, 1 carried, through broken arch and down the main corridor. Stone Starks watched their passage, Grey Kings glimpsing miracles reborn. The air cooled as they neared the stair, and frost began to cling again to fresh scales, yet the youngsters hardly noticed. Drogon herded them, tail sweeping softly as if he dared not harm them. In the courtyard, the night had deepened to stage of amethyst sky scattered with blazing stars. A door to infinity seemed opened overhead, and the wind smelled of new beginnings. Unsuspecting guards dropped helms and torches alike at the sight. Not 1, but 4 dragons emerging from the crypt mouth like legends stepping into waking world. Shouts erupted, half alarm, half astonishment. Tyrion Lannister strode from the great hall, goblet forgotten in hand. Gods help us, he murmured, though his eyes glittered, just when we were growing comfortable again. Sansa Stark descended from the battlements, cloak of weirwood red rippling. She halted, lips parted. More was all she managed. Daenerys, still cradling her hatchling, met Sansa's startled gaze. Winterfell tends to deliver surprises. She did not speak apology. She doubted Sansa wished to hear one. The jade dragon squirmed, emitting a chirp like cracking ice on a lake. Daenerys laughed, a true laugh, warm and alive. The sound startled her almost as much as it did those nearby. Jon brushed a snowflake from her cheek. What will you name them? She glanced from one hatchling to the next, the midnight blue sniffing at Tyrion's boot, the iron gray perched upon Jon's arm, wings fluttering uncertainly. Let them show me first who they are. Names carry weight. I will not chain them with words too soon. A hush fell as Bran Stark emerged, wheeled by Podrick Payne. The boy who was not a boy, king of the 6 kingdoms by council's decree, regarded the dragons with eerie serenity. His voice, when it came, was calm as moonlight. The world shifts again, he said. Threads rewrite themselves around new flame. The crypts were never meant merely for rest. They are seedbed of memory and of destiny. Tyrion cleared his throat. Destiny aside, These little ones will require feeding. He eyed the blue dragon now gnawing a decorative wolf's head torch bracket. A great deal of feeding, I imagine. The statement broke the tension. Nervous laughter rippled through those assembled. Winterfell's folk had battled dead men and lived. They could adapt to dragons the size of sheepdogs. But seeds of unease also sprouted, Sansa's expression tight, riders exchanging wary whispers, soldiers remembering the scorch marks that still stained the battlements from Drogon's first descent. Yet flame begets flame. Whatever lay ahead, this night could not be undone. Daenerys lifted her gaze to the heavens, an expanse of black velvet studded with diamond stars, and felt for the first time in moons a sliver of unburdened hope. The war for Dawn had ended, but Dawn itself had only just begun. By the next morning, rumor had spread as swiftly as raven flights across the realm. Old Nan told of knights fled from Winterfell after glimpsing newborn WRMS stalking the kennels. Maesters wrote hasty letters by lantern light, quills scratching warnings and wonders both. In White Harbor, the Manderleys debated whether to reinforce their portside ballistae. In the Vale, Lady Erin's regents argued that dragons in the north were no threat to Aerie. Across the narrow sea, Qohor's blacksmiths whispered that Valyrian flames had rekindled. Stories seated themselves in hearts and feuds and prayers. But within Winterfell's walls, the immediate concern was less legend than logistics. Drogon took roost at the courtyard's north end where slag and shattered statues marked his earlier passage. The hatchlings refused to stray far, though they rambled underfoot of gawping stable boys and darted between legs of war horses. They hissed at hounds who yelped and fled. When the cook's tabby bared her teeth at the iron-gray wormling, the kitten-sized dragon puffed a smoke ring that sent the cat streaking for high ground. Servants squealed, both delighted and terrified, as they swept fresh droppings the color of molten or from flagstones. Jon and Daenerys established a makeshift nursery in the broken archchamber, now cleared of rubble, lining the floor with furs and warmed with braziers. Ghost, ever watchful, prowled the threshold, red eyes weighing these new predators. He did not growl, but his hackles spiked like frost-crusted spears whenever the blue hatchling attempted to chase his tail. The castle steward reported to Sansa that they would exhaust Winterfell's goat stock within 2 days at the present feeding rate. Sheep could be driven from surrounding villages, but the trek risked exposure to bandits still haunting war-scarred roads. Jon gave orders for hunters to bring down elk and aurochs in the Wolfswood. Davos Seaworth suggested salting surplus meat for lean months ahead. Tyrion tallied costs and muttered numbers that made his scarred brow crease in alarm. Through all frenetic activity, Bran watched as if reading a book only he could see. Samwell Tarly, quill behind ear, questioned the young king. Have there been dragons bred this far north in recorded history? Not recorded, Bran answered, but history is a tapestry frayed at its edges, many threads lost to ice. He looked toward the broken arch, yet the roots remember. The crypts were carved deep to guard secrets, not merely bones. A flame may sleep and age under snow until the right breath stirs it. Sam scribbled, ink blotting parchment like spilled constellations. Then we must rewrite volumes. Meanwhile, Daenerys labored to bond with her new children, the jade hatchling, its scales fading toward palest mint as they hardened, became fiercely attached, riding upon her shoulder and snapping at anyone who approached too swiftly. She named it Erisys, meaning storm of dawn in High Valyrian. The midnight blue with silver striations she called Noxeres Night's Breath, for its scales glimmered like starlit sky. The iron gray, boldest and most inquisitive, she named Ferrix, Hammer of Winter. Jon watched her with concealed tenderness. On training grounds he sparred with Winterfell's captains, but between bouts he knelt to scratch Ferrix's neck ridges, earning a warbling purr that rattled armor. Here was a man who had renounced claim to southern crowns, yet the creatures of flame seemed to choose him despite bloodlines tangled. One crisp dusk, as pink twilight washed the sky, Jon climbed the battlement to find Daenerys seated on a parapet, Erisys coiled about her arm. The hatchling had grown already, wings wider than a war kite, claws like daggers. They'll outgrow crypts within moons, he said, leaning on the stones beside her. She nodded. We will need space. We will need skies free of arrows. She hesitated, then turned. When dragons first came to Westeros, they reshaped the world with fire. I must not repeat that ruin. These three were born of Winterstone. Perhaps they can teach us new ways. Jon's gaze followed ghostly columns of breath rising from the courtyard below, where Ferrex pounced on leather practice targets. Teach us or teach our enemies. There will be those who fear what they cannot bind. Fear will come regardless, she said, but fear can be tempered with trust if we show restraint. Her smile was faint. I'm still learning the shape of restraint. He let silence settle, broken only by distant clash of training swords and the hatchling's soft clicks. Finally, he spoke a thought that had troubled him since the crypt. The last time eggs hatched, they bound themselves to you. These three, are they yours alone? She looked at him sharply. Do you want one, Jon? He bit his lip, as if ashamed of wanting anything at all. Want? No, destiny chooses. If Ferrex thinks me righter, I won't deny the bond, but I'd not take what is yours. Dragons choose for themselves. She reached, touched his calloused hand. And so do we. He found comfort in the warmth of her fingers. The gulf wrought by throne and war, by prophecy and blood, felt suddenly narrower. Not erased, but narrower, a bridge perhaps dragons themselves might fly across. The weeks that followed turned to months blanketed in muffled snow. Winterfell's courtyards echoed with dragon cries as the hatchlings practiced first flutters. Blacksmiths forged saddle prototypes under Tyrion's supervision, though Jon balked at straw. Ping leather to creatures barely big enough to carry sheep. Maester Wolkan measured dragon growth daily, recording in copperplate script that their weight doubled every fortnight, that their flame unfurled in hues distinct. Erisys breathed palest blue fire that crackled like breaking ice. Noxeries expelled plumes tinged violet. Ferrex belched deep orange flames studded with sparks like embers from a forge. When spring's first thaw softened the snows, Bran called council in the Great Hall. Lords of the North, Vale, Riverlands, and Stormlands gathered beneath timber arches still charblack from long night fires. The dragons, too large for crypts now, roost on the battlements, their silhouettes carved against sunrise. Bran's voice carried the quiet authority of one who sees far beyond sight. The realm must decide what these dragons signify. Are they weapons? Are they wards? Or are they children of a new age we must learn to serve rather than command? Sansa spoke first, pragmatic. Winterfell swore host to Queen Daenerys under truce and purpose, but dragons hatched below are dead. Men whisper curses upon our house. They fear. Fear drives rebellion. Tyrion, leaning on the bench's end, countered. Fear also Dieters. With 3 new dragons, every petty challenger to the throne will think twice. Lord Glover objected. Or join to strike before those beasts reach full strength. Jon rose. Dragons are neither saviors nor demons. They are power, as flame is power. Can warm or burn. Our choice matters. He glanced to Daenerys, seated across from him, posture regal yet eyes soft as newly sprung grass. We must show realm and free cities alike that this power protects, not conquers. Daenerys spoke last. I would see the dragons guard the north against what darkness may yet rise. Let them be shields of ice and fire, not blades. And in exchange, I ask only that Winterfell allow me to raise them here until they fly strong enough to make their own roosts. Murmurs rippled, some skeptical, others intrigued. Bran closed pale eyelids. So it shall be. His decision carried weight beyond crowns. Winterfell will be sanctuary until first molt. He opened eyes clouded with distant storm. But beware, the world south of the neck stirs. Cersei's ghost still chills halls where her banners once hung. And in Essos, factions born of shadows dream of fire's return. Word of these dragons will draw more than friends. The council adjourned under uneasy truce. Daenerys found Jon atop the tower of the broken arch that evening. Sunset bled crimson across the sky, and in that light Noxeres streaked overhead, wings beating thunder from air. Jon chuckled, startled still by wonder. "Once I feared the world would end in darkness," he said. "Now I fear it may blaze too bright." She leaned into him, head against his shoulder. "Then we'll learn to shield our eyes." But the world beyond Winterfell's walls did not wait to learn. Across the narrow sea, in pale halls of Pentos, a council of magisters whispered of new Valyria rising. In King's Landing, soldiers drilled under banners of the Golden Lion beside a red-bearded man with smiles too wide and schemes twice as broad. Whispers rode the Rose Road and carried to Old Town, where archmesters argued over dragonhorn myths. And far north, past shattered ice lakes, wildlings claimed they saw a winged shadow blacker than night, a dragon older than all others, arisen from some hidden lair. As months stretched into turning year, Aerys shed fledgling down to glossy scales and could carry Daenerys short flights over godswood treetops. Noxeres bore Tyrion one memorable glide before dropping him into a herrick, an incident that spread through Winterfell with great laughter. Ferrex took to following Jon on patrols along the outer wall, curling atop parapets and spitting sparks at ravens that dared near. Yet not all omens were bright. One dawn, claxons rang from the watchtowers, sails on the shivering sea. A fleet, dozens of ships, black as pitch, sails emblazoned with golden krakens, approached the White Knife. The Ironborn had come north again. Yara Greyjoy attempted diplomacy, but her uncle Euron's followers ignored claims of peace. They came seeking plunder and rumored hatchlings whose sail might line pockets beyond counting. War's claws scrabbled at Winterfell's gates once more. Jon rode to muster Karstark and Mormont men. Daenerys saddled Drogon, while Aerys and Noxeres flew in spiral display overhead, wheeling like newborn storms, their linings still soft but their claws sharp. Ferrex trotted after Ghost, snarling at the scent of salt and steel. The first clash erupted in skirmishes along the shoreline. Ironborn raiders met Northman shields, and blood-stained thawing snow crimson. Yet Winterfell's Real edge soared above. Dragons swooped, scorching deck and mast, turning longships into floating pyres. Aerys' pale flame froze wood before it shattered. Noxeres' violet blaze seared armor clean through. Ferrex, not yet wing-strong, bounded among beached hulls like a cat among mice, snapping oars in twain with his jaws. Still, raiders pressed, launching ballisti bolts, black iron shafts laced with glass candles rumored to pierce even dragon scale. One such bolt whistled past Drogon's neck, grazing obsidian plate and raising a gout of fire as if insult. Drogon banked, looped, unleashed inferno upon the siege engines. On the beach, Jon fought like one reborn. Longclaw singing, parrying axe strokes, cutting through reavers whose faces split in terror at the sight of Ferrex looming behind him. But amid the chaos, he glimpsed a glint. Another bolt, aimed not at Drogon but at Aerys, still young, wings lighter. Jon shouted warning, lost in wind. The bolt hurled upward. Dany's heart seized as the streak of iron neared her jade-scale child. She spurred Drogon, but distance mocked urgency. Yet before the bolt could pierce membrane, Aerys folded wings and dove, the bolt passing harmless overhead, and in the same motion, Ferrex lunged from dunes, catching shaft in jaws, shattering it to splinters. The iron-born archer stood frozen. Ferrex's roar ended his astonishment. By sundown, the beach smoked, charred hulls bobbing on tide. Survivors fled to sea, pursued by gulls. Winterfell's banners rose again over windswept shore. Yet victory's price weighed heavy. A dozen Northmen dead, twice as many burned in blasts or trampled in panic. Still, dragons had proved guardians, not tyrants, protectors of northern lives. That night, Jon found Daenerys in the gods' wood among silent sentinels. She knelt by the heart tree, pale trunk scarred with red sap tears. Aerys perched on a low branch above, curling tail through crimson leaves. Drogon lay beyond the pool, weary eyes half-lidded. Jon sat beside her, and the hush of leaves seemed to hush the world. "We won," he said, though victory felt fragile. "Today," she replied. "Tomorrow the realm learns dragons defend Winterfell." Service demands more battlefields. Her voice trembled. Every life lost to prove us protectors feels like tatters on my soul. He took her hand, steady. You cannot guard all men from all harm, not with 3 dragons nor with 300. But you can show them another way. The fire born tonight in Winterfell's crypts was tempered by snow. That is new. What comes of that union will be new. She breathed, long and slow. Stars glittered through branches. The face carved in the heart tree watched them with unblinking calm. Will you stand with me when new wars come? She asked. I stood with you in darkness beyond the wall. I'll stand wherever light might bloom, he said. Their foreheads touched. Dragons hummed in unison. A lullaby felt rather than heard. In that quiet, Daenerys glimpsed a future not etched in conquest's blade but written in living flame and living ice, where children hatched under crypt stones might soar across a sky unscarred by chains. But winter yet clung to the land, and long shadows stretched westward. In secret covens, Maggie plotted spells to bind dragon hearts. In tear-damp halls of Riverrun, a young lord nursed grudge against Queensguard for scorched fields. Across the summer sea, weary slave traders licked wounds inflicted by breaker of chains and dreamt of vengeance. Fire had woken, and those who huddled in cold would not abide warmth unchallenged. So the story lengthened, as stories do. Threads twining, hearts breaking, kingdoms shifting beneath the wing beats of creatures reborn in night's deep crypt. Each moment bled into next, forging saga to fill 5 hours and beyond. And at its heart, in stone fortress older than memory, a clutch of dragons, winter dragons, grew beneath watchful eyes of man, wolf and weirwood, each breath a promise that the world could still astonish itself with wonder, even after all hope seemed spent. Snow fell in slow spirals that lingered in the air like drifting seeds of silence, catching on crenellations and burying the scars of battle beneath a pure white hush. Where burned hulls had littered the shivering sea's tide line only a tendy before, scavenger crows now picked at blackened spars half submerged in blue ice water, their caws carrying faintly to Winterfell's ramparts. The castle itself breathed as a living thing, old stones sweating in thaw, new timbers swelling, the clamor of carpenters and the clang of armorers mingling with children's laughter and the rasp of steel on whetstone. Life returned in layers, tender as the first crocus tips piercing snow, though war's scent still curled in gusts passing over the walls. Within the godswood, the heart tree's red leaves fluttered against a sky the color of beaten pewter. Jon Snow, call him Aegon for court, Jon for soul, stood knee-deep in powder before the weirwood, long claw planted tip first beside him, gloved hands resting on the wolf-head pommel. Beside him sat Ferrex, no longer the lanky pup-sized wormling of weeks past but a sinuous young drake whose wings, when unfurled, now spanned a small fishing skiff. Pale steam plumed from Ferrex's nostrils as he sniffed at the face carved in trunk, the fiery orange of his newly hardened eyes reflected in the bleeding mouth carved by ancient axes. You smell the sap, don't you? Jon murmured, voice a hoarse whisper. He had begun speaking to the dragon the way he once spoke to ghosts, soft, almost shy, as though his words might break an unspoken enchantment. Ferrex rumbled deep in his chest, a sound like peat-rich thunder. This tree keeps older secrets than either of us. Remember that when you're tempted to scorch everything that frightens you. The dragon cocked its head. Jon imagined he could feel thoughts thrumming behind those ember eyes, raw instincts shaping themselves toward comprehension, like half-lit embers coaxed to flame. On impulse, Jon pressed his palm to the dragon's brow. Heat pulsed beneath metal-hard scales, yet it felt no more perilous than a hearthstone after supper. For a breath he closed his eyes and tried, as Bran once described, to open himself. Let the world's heartbeat echo through him. He smelled pitch and snowmelt, tasted iron on the breeze, heard the far-off staccato of hammers in the yard. And deeper still, he sensed Ferrex's awareness nodding with his own. A flicker of hunger, a vague ache in young wing joints, a strong, simple devotion to the tall biped who offered warmth and scratches along a tender neck ridge. The bond was there, unforced, growing like ivy along a castle wall. Soft footfalls crunched snow behind him. Jon turned to see Daenerys approaching, Aerys draped round her shoulders like some strange princely stole. Mint-pale scales glinting sea green where torchlight kissed them, frilled head perched near her ear. The queen's cheeks were flushed from cold, silver gold hair trapped in a knotted braid thick as a sailor's rope, stray wisps frosting white at the tips. "He's taken to meditation, I see," she teased, nodding toward Ferrex. "Perhaps you'll teach him vows soon." "A dragon of the watch?" Jon allowed himself a faint smile. "He'd need a black cloak longer than the King's Road," Aerys squeaked indignantly, wings flaring just enough to scatter powdery snow off Daenerys' back. Drogon's distant bellow answered from some tower top, an almost paternal rebuke that set ravens flapping from rooftops. Daenerys sobered, gaze flicking from Ferrex to the heart tree's scarlet leaves. Bran sent word. Another raven from Old Town, Archmaester Meller petitions for samples of hatchling scales. Claims the Citadel wishes only to study growth rates, nothing more. Her lips twisted, as if we'd peel a child for curiosity's sake. Jon studied the tree's red sap mouth. "We'll send them cast-off fragments after the next molt. No harm in knowledge, and it may ease their minds to see we don't hide every detail." She nodded, though reluctance danced behind her eyes. "And the small council? Sansa has the Lord steady. At least those inside our walls," Jon said. "But House Glover and House Serwyn send letters. Worry over dragons hunting livestock. I've offered compensation in coin for every beast lost." He gave a rueful shrug. "Gold buys patience, if not loyalty." Daenerys glanced at Aerys as the dragonling climbed to her crown braid and chirped, frosted breath swirling. "We'll need more than patience and coin, my wolf. Winter is ending. The world will soon remember its appetites." She paused, then drew a folded scrap of parchment from the pocket of her cloak and passed it over. "This came from Yara an hour past. Spies in the Stepstones report a sell-sail flotilla bearing banners of Myr and Tyrosh, 24 ships, rowed by men calling themselves the Scalesworn. They boast of earning a dragon for each captain if they bring me to heel." Jon scanned the crabbed script. The wax seal had been cracked. Winterfell's courier had already read it, no doubt, but the words still reeked of sea salt and conspiracy. "They think you a prize to ransom," he muttered. "A heap of coin to split once they've caged you." He looked up, jaw tight. "They forget Drogon. They forget all four," she corrected, stroking Aerys under the chin. The hatchling cooed. "They forget the North, and they forget the prophecy in each beating heart. Ice and fire. Let them come. Let them learn wonder." Yet her tone carried no triumph. Jon heard weight there, the same burden he felt each dawn when he tallied butchered goats and envisioned full-grown dragons whose hunger might empty valleys. He reached for her hand. "We'll meet them together, and we'll find ways to ease the cost to those who never sought war." Proximity sparked memory of nights before pyres and dark gods. But duty stirred too, setting both their shoulders straight as captains before a storm. Together they left the godswood, dragons padding behind. Preparations unfolded like a complex dance across the following weeks. Tyrion commandeered a disused granary on the castle's east side, reinforcing rafters to house scorpion heads recovered from the Battle of Blackwater Bay. Cersei's old engines, shipped north at great expense, now repurposed not to kill dragons but to train them. Under Davos's supervision, ballista crews practiced tracking swinging hay bales while hatchlings swooped above, learning to dodge. Each near miss sent hearts pounding. Each mis-aimed bolt that thudded into yard dirt drew curses from bearded veterans who had never believed they would pray to miss. Maester Wolkan brewed potions of ground bone and smoked herring to lure dragons to mealtime posts rather than have them snatch shepherds' flocks. Sam Tarly, parchment in hand, documented every feeding. Weight of meat, flame color at belch, the texture of new scale plates. He invented a numeric scale of draconic humors, much to Tyrion's delight, and created charts mapping growth curves. When he confided to Gilly that the iron content of Winterfell's water might yield stronger bone in dragons than Essosi rivers, she launched a side experiment boiling creek water to test mineral sediment. Their humble quarters soon smelled of an apothecary wed to a fishmonger. On clear mornings, Jon rode out past the ridge with Ferrex trotting alongside, Ghost pacing on the opposite flank. The young drake's stride had grown sure, rising like a wave across snowdrifts. Yet each venture further from the walls tested trust between rider and beast. One brisk dawn they ventured to the last river, where pack ice cracked like thunder underfoot. Jon coaxed Ferrex to spread wings against cutting wind, to leap, to catch an updraft clawed from ravine currents. Twice the dragon misjudged, tumbling to snowpack that cushioned the fall. Twice Jon rushed to soothe the rumble of frustration. The third attempt, a gust lifted Ferrex high enough to glide half a spear cast before alighting in a spray of powder. Ferrex shook snow from wings and roared triumph. Jon laughed, a raw, boyish sound rarely heard since the wall, echoing through pines heavy with rime. Later, by a driftwood fire, Jon shared dried venison while the dragon gnawed a leg of elk. "Small steps, friend," he said, warmth radiating from Ferrex's flank, melting a ring into snow. "Someday you'll sail storms higher than any crow-cursed wall. Someday you'll carry me where shadows fear to follow." Ferrex's golden eyes reflected the flames. He nudged Jon's chest gently, then curled tail around to rest muzzle on clawed feet, sated. Ghost settled opposite, red eyes soft in drifting embers. A man, a wolf, and a dragon, the sort of hearth circle the old songs never dared imagine. At Winterfell's heart, politics brewed no less fierce than Smith's forges. In the great hall, Sansa presided over a meeting of northern bannermen, whose misgivings now wore polished boots and polished words. Lord Glover, barrel-chested and scar-nosed, voiced concerns first. "Speak plain, my lady. How long before the Queen's pets feast on our herds faster than they grow? We can scarce rebuild stores after these wars." Lord Serwyn countered, lean and hawkish. "Dragons guard us as walls never could. With them, ironborn raids will cease. Trade routes the Lannisters strangled will open." "To which ports?" Glover grumbled. "White Harbor still scrapes char off docks. The realm south mutters of tariffs and tolls." He glared toward Tyrion at Sansa's side. "And what of King's Landing? The lion may be declawed, but it still bears teeth enough to bite." Tyrion sipped mulled wine, then wiped mustache and answered evenly. "King's Landing rebuilds sewers and trust alike, but its gold flows slower than rumor. If by teeth you mean their new hand, Lord Tarly, he is more quill than fong. He will not march north without good cause. Let us not gift him one." Sansa listened, fingers steepled. When the debate threatened to loop yet again into arguments over grain tithes, she lifted a hand. "Enough! We speak of dragons as if they were winter storms, beyond our shaping. Yet every storm is weathered by preparation. Lord Glover, you will receive coin and seed to expand your cattle pastures come spring. Lord Serwyn, you will oversee the training of shepherds in warning horns. Any flock straying into hunting grounds will raise alarm before loss." She met each lord's eyes in turn, the calm of a heart tree in wind. "Dragons are not our doom. They are our charge. And if we fail that charge, the blame is ours, not theirs. See to your tasks. We reconvene in a fortnight." The lords rose, some muttering, but they bowed. Sansa descended dais steps to confide with Tyrion while scribes collected toll notes. "They expect dragons to starve or devour them," she said low. "Fear is a faster plague than pox." Tyrion glanced toward the high windows where dusk light slanted across hearth smoke. Then, "We inoculate them with smaller doses of wonder. Feast days in the yard, hatchlings performing fire dances, perhaps. Let folk witness that dragons can be taught restraint." Sansa arched a brow. "As you taught Drogon restraint when he singed your cloak's tail? Learning entails mishap," Tyrion conceded. She sighed, softening. "We'll try, but I want archers drilled in non-lethal arrow fire. Flames that burst bright but shallow. A spectacle, not a threat." Tyrion's grin crept. "Perhaps colored powder stuffed in bag arrows? Greens and purples to delight children." He tapped quill to lip. "We may yet turn fear to festival. For Daenerys, the days unfurled in duties both regal and maternal. She drafted letters to Dorne seeking Sandsteed Maras as gifts for the dragon's first long flights, reasoning their long limbs might outrun talons should a hunt go awry. She met with wildling chieftains at the castle gate, offering trade of furs and obsidian spearheads in return for eagle-eyed reports from the Frostfang Heights. More than once she sat at Bran's side while he gazed on some unseen path. One evening as moonlight frosted every parapet and starlight haloed the new snow, Bran spoke suddenly. The riverlands stir, his blind stare fixed sightlessly on the solar's rafters. House Frey has new blood in its halls, late-born sons hungry for scraps of old glory. They plot with sellswords who dream of dragons bound in chains of glass. Tyrion looked up from a ledger. Glass? You mean the obsidian chain legend? Folly, Daenerys said, though unease pricked. Dragons break any chain wrought by mortal hand. Bran's thin lips curved faintly. Not all dragons are broken by chains. Some by prophecy, some by hearts. He blinked, and the distant calm returned. Still, steel is easier. Later, alone with Drogon upon the highest tower, Aerys and Noxeres roosting near, wings wrapped round bodies against chill. Daenerys pondered prophecy, chain, and heart. She stroked the obsidian scales along Drogon's neck ridge. "Would you ever leave me?" she asked the knight, uncertain whether she asked the beast or the fate that bound them. Drogon's rumble vibrated stone. In the shimmering aurora of his half-lidded eye she glimpsed her own reflection. Small, firelit. Yet the pupil contracted and she saw more: wild sky, open plain, stars racing overhead in patterns unseen from Westeros. It was as if the dragon dreamed through her, distant vistas of ash dunes and cities of jade. She pressed her brow to his. "Hold fast," she whispered. "We will not be the flame that ends the world." Trouble came not with cell sails nor phrase, but from within the walls, quiet, deliberate, almost invisible. It began with a larder clerk missing ledgers. Then a Rills shepherd reported poisoned goat carcasses near the Wolfswood Trail, meant, perhaps, to sicken hatchlings. Sam's charts revealed a discrepancy in iron content of Aerys' last 2 feedings, as though someone swapped ore-rich pig's blood for lesser stock. And on a frigid dawn, a stable boy found black scorch marks on the crypt door's new timber. Someone had tried to spark Dragonflame by sneaking Noxeres inside while the dragon perched sleeping. The attempt failed. Noxeres, startled, had retreated, but the char told its tale. Jon convened a silent hunt. Davos organized rotating night watches. Arya returned for a brief visit while escorting King Bran to White Harbor, slipped through shadows to trace rumor. She found Prince, slim boots too small for sellswords, leading to the rookery. Ravens bore uncut jesses. One message lay unsent in a basket. Second molt begins. Fireproof resin holds. Horn ready. 5 riders near. No name, only a sigil scrawled in haste. A black sunburst encircled by chain links. Arya brought the scrap to Sansa, eyes narrow. The Lady of Winterfell paled. "The scale sworn," Sansa murmured. "I thought them sell-sale braggarts, but this..." She knelt by the fireplace, fed the parchment to flame. "No more ravens tonight. Anyone seen near that rookery without escort is clapped in irons." Arya smirked. "Or dealt with." She vanished into corridor gloom before Sansa could protest. That night, under a moon half veiled in drifting cloud, Aerys screeched from the battlement where he slept. Daenerys rose from restless dreams and hurried into frostbit hallway barefoot, gown snapping about ankles. She saw nothing at first, just swirling snow. Then a flicker, torchlight half hidden behind a stair column. A masked figure wrestled with Aerys, looping a chain coated in dark tar about the dragon's neck. Aerys flapped, wings bashing stone with cannon boom echoes, tail thrashing. The chain glimmered strangely, almost oily, shimmering violet where moon kissed resin. Daenerys screamed fury and dashed forward, unarmed. The assailant shoved a spike into Aerys' maw, prying jaws, then tipped a vial of viscous black down the hatchling's throat. Aerys spasmed, flame sputtering blue but dampened by the vile potion. The figure turned toward Daenerys, eyes glinting behind a mask carved like a kraken, but a white flash preceded them. Ghost barreled from the stairwell, jaws closing on the saboteur's wrist. A dagger skittered across flagstones. Aresses lurched, shook chain loose, spitting liquid that hissed as it hit stone. Daenerys hurled herself atop the saboteur, nails clawing mask away. Beneath, a woman's face, pale, hair cropped, a tear tattoo under one eye. No older than 20, but hatred aged her features. She hissed a curse in Volantine High Valyrian. Dany recognized the dialect. "For the black sun we rise." The queen's reply was simple rage. She struck once, twice, before guards thundered down the hall. They pulled the woman off Ghost's grip, bound bleeding wrist, dragged her struggling toward cells. Aresses wheezed. Daenerys cradled his neck, feeling tremors quake through scale and bone. Maester Wolkan arrived with Tyrion, Sam, and Jon soon after. Under torchlight, they examined the tarry residue still clinging to chain and dragon's tongue.
Some sniffed, grimaced.
Smells of pine pitch laced with widow's bloodroot, a suppressant used in lists to quell wildfire, likely meant to dampen flame entirely. Jon clenched fists. Poison aimed not to kill but to enslave. Dany stroked Aresses' throat until tremors eased. "I will see the woman. She will tell me who holds the horn." Interrogation lasted days. The prisoner, one Doria Sand, bastard of unknown Dornish father, spoke little. Arya's blade at throat loosed only muttered hymns to the black sun. A faith born in Volantis, worshipping fire-tamed dragons under a prophet calling himself Herkun reborn. They believed only chained flame could usher a new dawn of mortals made immortal. "We seek not your death," Daenerys told her on the third dusk, voice cold with controlled wrath. "We seek your release from madness." Doria spat blood. "You fear what will come when we parade your dragons in silver fetters across the long bridge. The world will kneel not to you, breaker, but to the chain that broke you." Jon watched from shadows behind the queen, jaw set. "You know nothing of chains. She knows the bitter taste of freedom denied," Daenerys murmured, uncanny softness tinging words. Doria frowned, confusion flickering. "I once wore manacles small enough to bruise a child," the queen continued. "I remember each click of lock. I broke them with fire. You praised chains that would bind again. Tell me why." Doria stared through her, silent. In the end, secrets pried not from words but from the sigil stitched within her boot. Silver thread glinted under torch. Same black sunburst ringed by chain. Varys' little birds once whispered of that emblem, though none thought it more than cult. Tyrion and Sam pored over old Pentoshi trade records, discovering shipments of resin to a wharf warehouse leased by a house Sterys, its ledger names forged. Davos charted the stepstones route those ships sailed. All arrows pointed east. So, Council resolved to send a delegation south, the dragon's first venture beyond Winterfell. Drogon would bear Daenerys. Ferrex, untested but eager, would carry Jon. Noxeres and Aresses would remain to guard castle under Sansa's watch, Tyrion commanding Scorpion crews in worst case. Rookery-bound ravens flew ahead to White Harbor. Yara's longship Sea Bitch awaited moored in floating ice, its crew sworn to ferry the two dragons on floating barges large enough to launch from deck once southward winds warmed. Morning before departure dawned red gold, sky blazing as though heralding their sails. Jon knelt in yard before Ferrex, now saddle-rigged with leather silver-trimmed. Wind whipped his cloak. He rested forehead to dragons. "Steady wings," he whispered. Ferrex chuffed, breath curling like forge smoke. Daenerys approached astride Drogon, armor of dark steel edged in copper catching sunrise. She regarded Jon, something unreadable behind violet gaze. "Ready, as I'll ever be," he answered. She nodded to Sam, who stepped forward bearing a small chest bound in bronze. "A final gift," the maester said. "Dragonbone powder mixed with crushed frost lotus leaf strengthens lungs. Sprinkle in their feed should they strain in southern heat." Jon accepted. "Thank you, Sam." Tyrion raised a wine cup though dawn had barely cleared. "To new horizons," he toasted. And to returning alive so I don't have to chair council meetings alone. Laughter twined with tension, brittle but real. Bran, bundled against wind, spoke from his wicker seat rolled by Podrick. Paths widen like river mouths, some branch, some sink. Choose the current kindly. With that ambiguous blessing, great wings beat. Snow blew in whirlwinds as Drogon leapt, Ferrex after. Sails unfurled below, stark white with direwolf sigil and a three-headed dragon entwined. Winterfell's towers dwindled beneath, banners flapping farewell. The voyage proved both marvel and ordeal. Sails strained as sea bitch skirted jagged ice floes, dragons circling overhead by day, tethered to ship rails by rope at night, tails coiled like monstrous mooring lines. Crew slept uneasily but grew accustomed. After the first cookfire panicked by Ferrex's curious sniff nearly tipped the pot, causing Yara to roar at both dragon and greenhorn. Past Eastwatch's bleak ruins the sea opened wide. Migrating whales breached, and Drogon answered with triumphant roar that echoed off water like thunderclap, scattering gulls. Jon rode Ferrex on short scouting sorties, skimming wave tips so close seawater sprayed over boots. He found glee there he hadn't felt since first gallop upon Regal. He also found caution when Ferrex chased a shiver of fish too near, nearly dunking them both before righting. Nights, Jon and Daenerys took watch together on quarterdeck, wind-whipping cloaks as constellations wheeled above. They spoke quietly of strategy, whether to strike the Black Sun stronghold or infiltrate. They shared flasks of mulled mead, warmth seeping through glove to glove when hands brushed. Affection grew again, tentative as buds in late frost. Neither named it, but both felt iron grip of loneliness loosen. Halfway through the voyage they encountered wreckage. A merchant cog ravaged by something more than storm. Decks splintered as though scorched, masts melted and fused. Burn patterns curved in broad arcs. Dragonfire, but of hue neither queen's nor her brood's. The wood was blistered green-blue, edges fused to glass. Jon knelt by a scorched beam, finger-tracing. Wildfire, he guessed. Daenerys shook head. Wildfire stains ebony. This is hotter, like shadow flame we used to forge dragonglass spears. She met his gaze. Another dragon. Or something worse, he said. They drifted on uneasy currents thereafter, each mind turning. Bran's warning of shadows north of ice lakes returned to Jon, slithering behind thoughts as they anchored near the island chain where spice ships once traded. Ferrex sensed tension, growling at each distant thundercloud. When at last they sighted volcanic peaks of the Stepstones archipelago, black plumes rose from crater mouths. The sea smelled of sulfur. Atop a jagged islet stood a fort of glassy basalt, its parapets shining obsidian in midday glare. Banners flapped, black suns wreathed by silver chains. Docked below, a flotilla. Longships bore scorpion mounts, their iron bolts tipped with crystal. Daenerys circled high, scouting from Drogon's back. She saw pens near the fort's base, huge, steel-latticed. Something moved within, scales glimmering dull bronze. Eyes hollow yet watching. A dragon but gaunt, wings ragged. Beside the pen stood a horn twice the height of a man, carved from tusk of some leviathan, rings of inscription wrapping round. Harkun reborn waited. Jon glimpsed him through Ferrex's keen eyes. A tall, bald figure in smoke-gray robes, arms raised in benediction toward the approaching shapes above. Crewmen below kneeled, chanting as though hailing Messiah. Daenerys's blood chilled. "They seek to sound the horn," she shouted across wind to Jon, circling near. "A dragon binder. If they blow it we may lose Drogon." Jon's heart hammered. Old tales of Euron Greyjoy's horn that blackened lungs of blower and chained dragons sprang to mind. "We stop them before breath meets mouth," he called. Ferrex banked. The assault that followed etched legend. Drogon plummeted first, flame sweeping parapets into molten rivers. Ferrex dove beside, Jon's cloak snapping. Ballistae cracked, corals hissed upward, but dragons danced. Ferrex wove between shafts, wings buffeted by crosswinds, while Drogon rose on thermal plumes to strafe again. On the ground, defenders scrambled. Herkun seized horn, lips parting to blow. But Daenerys leaned close to Drogon's neck ridge, whispered Valyrian that glowed in her mouth like coals. Drogon spat a focused lance of fire, not broad conflagration but a single beam narrow as a spear. It struck the horn's mouthpiece just as Herkun's breath touched. The ivory exploded, shards slicing air into a hailstorm. The prophet reeled, lungs pouring black smoke as cursed iron seared flesh, Horn's death curse turning on him. He collapsed, blood and tar mixing. Pens shattered under heat, freeing the gaunt bronze dragon within. Yet the creature did not flee skyward. It crawled, broken, scales shedding. Ferrex landed beside its path. The dying drake lifted molten eyes to the young one, exhaled a sigh of ember dust, and stilled forever. Battle ended swiftly. Without Horn, morale crumbled. Cell sails threw down arms, some leaping into sea. Drogon perched atop shattered tower, wings spread triumphant against a sky now streaked crimson from volcanic dusk. Jon dismounted and strode through rubble until he found Daenerys kneeling beside the prophet's corpse. She rose, face streaked with soot and tears not her own. "It's done," he said gently. She looked to the dead bronze dragon, small still compared to Drogon yet grotesquely scarred. "How many more suffer in cages we haven't found?" she whispered. "How many horns lie undestroyed?" Jon had no answer. He squeezed her shoulder, solid, grounding. "We'll find them." Ferrex nudged her hand, warm breath fogging ash away. Behind, the stepstone's fortress smoldered, chains melted, black sun banner curling in firelight. Yet the world beyond still held fears. Jon gazed over charred rampart toward horizon where Essos's distant shores lay, and he knew the tale of dragons hatched under Crypt would ripple further still. Weeks later they returned to Winterfell under northern sky bright with stars. A hush fell over ramparts as 4 dragons alighted, Drogon, Ferrex, and Noxeres and Aerys racing from battlements to greet siblings with screeches that shook icicles loose. Snow billowed in joyous storms. Sansa emerged, bundled, a rare smile breaking frost. Bran watched from tower window, pale eyes as fathomless as ever. News of the Black Sun's defeat spread swift as dawn rays.
Lord marvelled, small folk sang, Maester revise de tome.
Yet Daenerys stood in courtyard amid swirling snow and felt weight heavier still. There would always be another horn, another chain dreamt by men who feared or coveted power. Dragons were not ends, they were crossroads. Where the world turned next would depend not on flame or fong, but on heart. She turned to Jon, whose cloak fluttered like crow's wings beside White Wolf and copper-eyed Drake. "The story grows," she said. "And we must write it," he answered. Around them dragons sang, 4 voices rising, weaving through night like threads of dawn and dusk. Torchlight flickered across stone, banners stirred, and overhead, above ancient fortress and newborn myth alike, the first snows of a lingering winter parted to reveal a clear canopy of stars, each a promise that even in darkened skies, light learned new ways to burn. The tale would spool on, 5 hours and more, through seasons of war and wonder. But for this heartbeat, ice and fire breathed one breath, and the world, listening, shivered not from cold but from the thrill of possibility. The morning after the dragon's triumphant return, Winterfell woke to a hush that felt both reverent and foreboding, as if every lintel and lintel shadow carried the memory of wings beating midnight's air. Snow still blanketed roofs and ramparts, but the thrum of spring hid beneath, a faint, sap-sweet promise ready to burst. Stable boys whispered of Aerys and Noxeres roosting on the rookery tower like jeweled gargoyles. Scullions swore that Ferrex's dawn roar rattled kitchen ladles clean off their hooks. Everywhere, the castle inhaled the possibility of change and exhaled a tremor of awe. Yet even wonder could not still the pulse of duty. By first bell, Jon Snow gathered a war council in the solar once reserved for Stark lords. The hearth roared, the windows fogged, parchment maps weighed with iron wolf heads sprawled across a trestle table. Sansa stood at his right, calm and unblinking. Tyrion hovered left, quill in hand, hair singed at the tips where Drogon's landing gust had toppled a torch the night before. Davos Seaworth, boots still crusted with Stepstone's ash, leaned against the wall, while Samwell Tarly huffed up the stairs bearing a ledger of dragon growth charts so thick it could stand in for the battered shield propped by the door. Bran remained in his wheeled chair near the hearth, eyes half-lidded as if he listened to some invisible chorus. Daenerys paced. Her armor had been swapped for a Targaryen red wool dress trimmed in direwolf gray, an emblem of Union Tyrion insisted would photograph well in any future royal portrait, though she hardly cared for paintings. Her steps were light but purposeful. The jade-hued streaks along her sleeves matched Aerys's newest wing vein pattern, gift of the castle seamstress who had begun dyeing fabrics in dragonfire colors. Jon cleared his throat, deep and steady. "We broke the Black Sun's horn and scattered their fleet," he began. "But we only know one prophet's name. Herkun may have had lieutenants in Pentos, Volantis, Qohor, for all we know, across the Sunset Sea. We must root them out before they build another horn." Tyrion dipped quill. "Spies in the free cities report an upsurge of shadow markets trading in fire-mute resin. I suspect that's the pitch we saw force down Aerys's throat. Cheap to brew, deadly to flame. If cultists can suppress a dragon's breath even briefly, they could attempt capture." Sansa's eyes narrowed. "Then burn the brew and the brewers both. Quietly but thoroughly." "Easier said than done," Davos remarked. "Smugglers love a potion that travels well in pine barrels. You'll find charlatans hawking it as liniment for gout in Gulltown before noon. Barring a sea of pitch, dragon scales remain near impenetrable," Sam added, flipping to a page thick with figures. "But I fear starvation tactics. A snared dragon can be tamed if kept half-dead." He swallowed. "My calculations show they need thrice the meat of a warhorse every month at current size. Full-grown, 5 times that." Daenerys halted her pacing. "So we must secure food lines as we would secure sword lines. Winterfell can handle a year, maybe 2. After that, the younglings will need hunting ranges." "All roads lead back to the North's granaries," Sansa agreed. "I've a plan to increase cattle herds near the bar rollins. We'll rotate fields, plant turnip and winter beet for forage. But if southern houses close trade routes out of spite..." Tyrion tapped the map. "Stormlands and Reach still owe debts for grain shipments during the long night. We call markers." He looked to Daenerys. "Send ambassadors with dragons overhead. Even a glimpse of Ferrex's shadow persuades quicker than parchment seals." Jon shook his head. "We threaten, they resist. They resist, they arm. That road ends where the dance of dragons began. Fief pitted against fief, king against kin. We must pair shadow with light. A festival, as Tyrion suggested. Show realm and Riverland's children that dragons are protectors, not tyrants." "Perhaps both," Bran murmured, voice distant. Shadow and light entwine like roots about a stone. They fell silent, accustomed by now to Bran's riddles. It was Sansa who found clarity in the pause. "Very well," she said. "We'll draft invitations to a spring moot. Let lords travel north, sup at Winterfell, witness hatchlings in a display of restraint. We will combine pageant and parliament." Meanwhile, Davos added, "We sail ravens south. Maester Wolkan can inoculate citadels with the truth before rumor curdles into hysteria." Sam brightened. "And if we share our research, growth curves, feeding protocols, maesters can't claim ignorance." Daenerys exhaled. "We pull fear into daylight, kill it with knowledge." She looked around the table. "Make it so." The fortnight that followed turned Winterfell into a hive of feverish preparation. Carpenters raised scaffold stages beside the training yard, lacing them with carved direwolves and 3-headed dragons entwined around columns. Seamstresses worked day and night dyeing banners the green-white of Aerys's scales, the midnight silver of Noxeres, the dusk iron of Ferrex. Northmen laughed that the yard looked ready for a mummer's farce, but even the roughest spearmen admitted the bright fabrics gleamed welcome color against a kingdom still bruised by decades of war. Tyrion oversaw a new brew hall adjoining the south gate. "If you expect visiting lords to applaud your dragons, you must ply them with ale," he told Sansa. "Strong, sweet, and free for the first cup. He drafted recipes blending honey from Bear Island hives with Dornish spice, scandalizing more conservative palates, but he insisted contrast invited conversation. And conversation invites commerce, he added, burying nose deep in a tankard. Jon drilled Knights of the Vale in formation around the yard perimeter. They were to demonstrate discipline under dragon passovers, marching with shields up but spears down. Less like bristling hedgehogs, more like shepherds guarding sheep. He met skepticism among highborn knights until Ferrex swooped low during rehearsal and scattered them like ninepins. Embarrassment proved an effective teacher. Daenerys spent hours each dawn in a muse-like pen at the Godswood edge. There she trained Aeryces and Noxeres to flame at markers. Wooden stakes painted bright red hammered into practice yards. She clicked tongue twice. Aeryces spat a curtain of pale blue fire that sizzled but left stone unmelted. 3 clicks. Noxeres exhaled violet flame in an arc no higher than 2 grown men. Drogon watched, sprawled like a black mountain beyond the wall, rumbling approval when younglings obeyed, roaring admonition when exuberance scorched the scaffolds. In one alarming moment, Noxeres' flame caught a banner alight and Tyrion had to scuttle up a ladder, cloak billowing, to snuff the blaze with a snow-soaked quilt. Throughout, word spread. A trickle of carriages became a stream, then a flood. Banners of reed otters, Manderley mermen, Baratheon stags battered by sea travel. Even Lady Ellen Tarth arrived, azure heart emblazoned on sail, bringing casks of watery wine that set Tyrion coughing but kept small folk warmed. Some houses came curious, some suspicious, a few openly hostile, like Lord Rowan of Golden Grove, who refused Winterfell guest right and camped outside the walls, drilling archers with blackshaft arrows for hawk hunting, though everyone knew hawks seldom grew 4-foot wingspans. Amid guest quarters filling, kitchens steaming, and dragons belching smoke rings into evening sky, arrived Lord Samwell Tarly's mother Melissa, who had never seen a dragon and declared first sight of Ferrex, a stout boy badly in need of a bath. Ferrex sneezed sparks onto her shawl. The thick wool smoldered, provoking squawking laughter among washerwomen who secretly disliked her ivory hall airs. Then came the Dornish. A bright procession of sand steeds and copper-skinned warriors wound through Winterfell's snow-dusted streets like a desert river. At its head rode Princess Arianne Martell, eyes lined with kohl, cloak patterned in sun spears over orange silk. Though she bore condolences for lives lost in the Stepstones raid, her true cargo intrigued. Laden wagons heavy with barrels of sun-dried figs, kegs of spiced wine, and, most prized, 17 speckled dragon eggs, fossilized or infertile by all Maester reckonings, gathered through Sunspear's coastal trade. A gift, storm-born queen, Arianne said on the dais that evening, voice husky with sand and smoke, to show Dorne's faith in a future where dragons soar without fear of chain or horn. Daenerys approached the wagon. The eggs varied in size, some small as quail eggs, others near a helmet's girth. Their colors fascinated. One looked carved from amethyst, another mottled cream shot with russet flecks. She laid a gentle hand on the largest, felt only cool stone. Yet as her palm lingered, a spark, no more than a pulse, seemed to ripple beneath the shell. She inhaled sharply but masked it with gratitude. Dorne honors us. Privately, she met Jon in the crypt chamber that night. The eggs lay arranged on a velvet-lined tray between them. Ghost nosed one, then whined, unsettled. Ferrex pressed snout through archway but obeyed Jon's hush. In flickering torchlight, Daenerys traced each shell. Some hold naught but ash, she whispered. Yet one or two, I feel them listening. Jon folded arms. Another clutch could feed hope, or feed those who would enslave flame again. Which is why they must hatch here under watchful eyes. She locked gaze with him, and if they do not quicken, they must remain stone. He touched her wrist. We'll decide together. At dawn of the moot, Winterfell's courtyard shone with fresh fallen snow that winked like powdered gemstones. Wooden bleachers lined either side of a long procession path, banners fluttering overhead, each bearing sigils stitched with hints of dragon scale shimmer. Lords and ladies filled benches, breath fogging. Small folk watched from walls and rooftops, children hoisted on shoulders. Tension prickled like static. Sansa stood at dais center, hair woven with red leaf pins. She raised a wolf-headed staff. "People of Westeros," her voice carried far on crisp air, "we gather not for war, nor for allegiance demanded by sword. We gather for witness, to see what has not been seen in living memory. Dragons who choose guardianship." A hush, then a low boom. The gate to the Godswood pen creaked open. Daenerys strode forward, helmless, cloak fanning behind like ember smoke. At her side paced Aerys, wings half unfurled, scales glinting jade in sunrise gold. 3 heartbeats later, Jon emerged from the opposite arch astride Ferrex. Saddle cinched, reins loose. Ferrex's wings flared, revealing fresh pinions edged pewter. Ghost loped beside, snow spraying under paws. Cheering rippled but quickly hushed as anticipation tightened. A horn sounded thrice, Davos's cue. Aerys launched first. With 2 bounding steps he leapt, wing beats driving gusts across benches. Snow swirled into shimmering eddies. The hatchling climbed a furlong into sky, then banked, making a slow, low pass across the yard. Children squealed. Shawls whipped. On cue, Daenerys clapped once. Aerys spat a graceful ribbon of blue flame toward a row of crimson markers. Fire snaked precisely, igniting wicks soaked in lamp oil. Torches flared bright but contained. Spectators gasped. Next, Noxeres took flight from yard wall where he'd perched unseen. A stealth flourish Tyrion insisted would keep lords clinging to their codpieces. The midnight blue drake soared higher, then tucked wings and dove vertical, straight toward the dais, only to splay talons at the last moment, breaking with a thunder of leathern wings that sent hats flying. He alighted delicately atop a carved stone direwolf and uttered a trumpeting cry. Roars of applause echoed. Finally, Jon urged Ferrex forward. Unlike siblings, Ferrex bounded down the path on all fours, wings tucked. At midway he launched, but instead of climbing he skimmed the bleachers at eye level. Lords flinched. Ladies clutched jewels. Ferrex held course until he neared a cluster of archers from Lord Rowan's camp, standing arms folded in distrust. There he banked gently and hovered, just long enough for Rowan to swallow hard, then rose in a column spiral ascent that traced sky like quill ink. Reaching apex, Ferrex exhaled a single deep orange burst straight upward, harmless, a salute to sun. Cheers rolled like thunder. Tyrion leaned toward Davos. "Too much," he quipped. "Enough to loosen bowels but not pull swords." Davos smiled. "Perfect." The display segued into moot proper. Long trestle tables groaned under venison pies, honey-roasted duck, fried cod from White Harbor, spiced Dornish wine flowed. Northmen toasted reachmen. Wildlings traded furs for arbor gold. Amid laughter and debate, small councils of lords stepped aside with maesters to scrutinize Sam's fabled charts. They discovered that for every goat a drake devoured, Winterfell's tanners produced gloves from leftover hides. Blacksmiths fashioned nails from boiled bones hardened by dragonfire. A tidy new industry. In the afternoon, talks turned pointed. Lord Rowan demanded guarantees dragons would not patrol beyond the neck uninvited. Sansa offered a charter. Flight paths agreed upon by each region, recorded by maesters, with violation fines payable in gold or grain. Lord Tully proposed river festivals where dragons would light floating lanterns for fallen soldiers of the long night, a gesture of shared mourning that drew murmured assent. Arion Martell, wine goblet held high, proclaimed Dorne's readiness to host a hatchery in the Red Mountains, citing warmth and wind currents. Daenerys demurred but hinted at mutual research. If Dornish engineers could construct volcanic rookeries replicating those under Valyria, perhaps safe southern sanctuaries awaited. Night found the outer ward humming with music. Reed pipers played lilted tunes. Vale minstrels countered with harp ballads. Even the Ironborn pounded out saltwater jigs on overturned ale casks. Snow drifted down in lazy flakes, catching torchlight like swirling fireflies. Daenerys wandered through, cloak dusted white. She heard her name whispered with tones ranging wary to worshipful. Ferrex lounged beside a brazier, letting children plait ribbons around his horns. Noxeres slept curled about the maiden pool, steam rising where his belly warmed the water. Erisys perched on the broken arch tower, surveying with bright curiosity. Jon found her near the smithy, leaning against a post, cheeks flushed from mulled cider. "Not how I pictured a mood of kingdoms," he said, gesturing at a drunk Umber lord singing bawdy verses about a lizard lover to scandalized Septa Moel. She smiled. "Better than heads on spikes." "True." He paused, gaze softening. "You did well." She corrected. He looked up. Snowflakes melted in his hair. "Walk with me." They slipped away from revelry into the quiet of the godswood. Moonlight silvered the heart tree, frost-limbed branches in crystal. Breath puffed white between them. "I remember the first time I stood before this tree, ready to pledge to the night's watch," Jon said. "I thought life's path set narrow. Now," he glanced skyward where Erisys circled lazily, "now I ride dragons." Daenerys's voice was gentle. "Paths change, but vows remain." He nodded. "My vow to guard the realms of men. Dragons guard now too. Feels right." He reached, brushed a snowflake from her eyebrow. She caught his hand. Fingers laced. Stillness stretched, rich and fragile. Hearts hammered in unison as if large wings beat inside chests. She leaned into him, lips brushed. From above, a low croon Drogon's, perhaps amused, perhaps protective, vibrated tree trunks. They parted, laughter soft. Jon rested forehead against hers. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "I meet with Lord Rowan to finalize charter." "You?" "Cataloging the Dornish eggs," she replied. "Wolkan insists on weighing each to the grain. He'll twitch if I'm late." "Then go," he said reluctantly. She touched his cheek. "Come help. You've steadier hands with scales." "I'll spill ink on ledger," he teased. A grin. Then she left, footsteps silent on snowy loam. In crypt chamber, candlelight danced over fossilized shells. Sam muttered about weight differentials. Wolkan measured, scribbling. Jon, sleeves rolled, lifted eggs gingerly. The largest, amethyst with silver veins, felt unexpectedly warm. He frowned. "Did you heat this?"
"No," Volkan answered.
"Room holds steady at 4 degrees. Must be residual from handling." Daenerys exchanged glance with Jon. She set the egg upon wolf-pelt cushion. Faint warmth radiated still. "Perhaps it's retaining body heat from your grip," Sam suggested, but uncertainty flickered. They proceeded, yet each time Jon touched an egg, warmth bloomed anew. The amethyst one pulsed strongest. Daenerys's breath quickened. Memories surged of blazing pyre on the red waste, of first egg cracking. Her voice trembled. "Fire and blood," she whispered. Torch flame guttered. In that instant Bran's raven landed on sill, cawing thrice. Wolkan jumped. Jon set down egg slowly. "Something stirs," he said, a hush thicker than stone pressed. Daenerys stepped back. "Lock them in iron," she ordered quietly. "Double ward." Sam protested. "But if they're viable." "Not here," she snapped. She touched the shell, palm splayed. The pulse continued, faint but undeniable. "Not until we understand why." They sealed the eggs in a reinforced chest lined with sigil wax, placed behind barred grate guarded by unsullied veterans now under Grey Worm's successor, Captain Naka. Only Jon, Daenerys, and Sansa held keys. Yet news of warm eggs would not remain confined. Rumor raced along corridor walls, through ale-loosened tongues of stable hands who carted barrels near the crypt door. By dawn the Reachmen camp murmured that the Queen bred secret clutches to hurl upon those who refused homage. Lord Rowan took counsel with his septon. Before long, emissaries galloped south bearing tales of dragon multiplication. Tyrion foresaw fallout, but could not plug every mouth. "Information spills like wine," he sighed to Davos, "and this castle hosts a vineyard of gossip." Davos countered, "Let them talk. Some fear is fertilizer for caution, but we'd best ensure seeds sprout truth-fast." "An elegant metaphor," Tyrion conceded. Though I prefer manure to fertilizer. Matches the scent. That afternoon, a raven arrived from King's Landing. Its black ribbon marked urgent. Tyrion read, brow furrowing deeper with each line. He gathered Daenerys, Jon, Sansa, Bran, and key advisors in council chamber. He began without preamble. Lord Randall Tarly, Hand of the Queen, has summoned the small council to debate restrictions on dragon travel south of the Trident. He cites unchecked proliferation of destructive beasts and demands any new clutches be transported to Dragonstone for supervision under Crown Guard. Sansa scoffed. Randall Tarly would sooner mount our heads on his ramparts than guard new hatchlings. Indeed, Tyrion said. He also requests presence of Queen Daenerys to testify under oath to safety measures. Daenerys' eyes flashed. He seeks to recall me to King's Landing, strip me of northern strength, and hold dragons hostage. Jon asked, do we ignore? If we ignore, southern houses may unify under threat of draconic tyranny, Davos warned. We risk splitting realm again. Bran spoke, voice echoing like wind through cracks. Paths diverge. One leads to flames on Blackwater Bay, another to frost on Fields of Dorne. He closed eyes. The decision rests upon mercy tempered with fire. Sam sighed, cryptic as ever. Tyrion tapped chin. We could counter with an envoy, demonstrate willingness to negotiate but retain northern leverage. A dragon ride down the King's Road, Noxeries perhaps, escorting a delegation of maesters, farmers, and small folk who've benefited from Drake protection. A living testament. Sansa regarded maps. And if Tarly tries to seize envoy, then he learns how quickly a dragon crosses a moat, Jon said darkly. Daenerys paced.
No.
We do not fuel fear by flaunting might. I will go, but with only a token guard. No dragons except Drogon, and he will not land inside the city. He will circle, watching. Travel alone? Jon's voice roughened. Not alone, she corrected. With you, my Hand of the North. She placed hand on Jon's. We show unity between ice and fire. Proof this is not conquest but partnership. Sansa frowned. Leaving Winterfell with 3 growing dragons and eggs that might hatch. Tyrion, Grey Worm, and I will manage, she reassured. The realm must see trust. It must see me walk into Lion's Den unchained. After tense debate, council agreed. Preparations commenced for the journey. Letters to be read into small council record. Testimony drafted emphasizing agricultural boons of dragon-heated greenhouses, protection of shipping lanes from Ironborn. Maester Wolkan packaged scrolls of population growth charts correlating with dragon patrol routes. Statistics Sam insisted would appeal to rational minds. At dawn 3 days later, roof tiles glittered with rime as Drogon folded wings beside the training yard. Daenerys mounted first, silver braids tucked beneath wolf fur hood. Jon joined, gripping saddle loop. Below, Ferrex paced, agitated not to follow. Jon leaned down, stroked neck ridge. Guard home, he murmured. Ferrex rumbled reluctant assent. Sansa clasped Daenerys' hand. Return soon. Guard the eggs, Daenerys urged. I will, Sansa vowed. Tyrion stepped forward, produced a clay bottle of spiced honey rum. For courage, he said, pressing it to Jon's belt. And for bribes, should the gold cloaks need warming. Jon smirked. I'll see it rationed wisely. Drogon leapt, wings pounding air into cyclones. Snow erupted beneath to reveal stone. Winterfell tilted away, banners shrank to thread. Beneath them north turned from patchwork of white and pine to a ribbon of color. King's Road unspooling south like a scar. Hours passed in chill wind. Jon wrapped arms around Daenerys' waist, both for warmth and closeness. Conversation impossible over roar of wings. They spoke only through touch. A squeeze to point out a herd of wild elk scattering below. A gent. Le tap to indicate distant watchtower smoke. Land hurried beneath. Moat Kaelin's mossy ruins. Twins' broken bridge section. Trident glistening like iron snake. At dusk, they circled above Harrenhal's skeletal towers. Daenerys chose an island spit on God's eye for camp. Drogon perched atop Weirwood Stump, eyes burning into gathering dark. Jon and Daenerys built a small fire shielded by rock. Fish sizzled on flat slate. Sweetgrass tea steamed. Under stars, Daenerys spoke quietly. My first journey north, I dreamed of Iron Throne. All jagged glory, dragon wings behind. Now I dream of fields, children chasing Ferrex's tail, maesters measuring eggs. She smiled wanly. A humbler throne. Jon poked embers. Humble still holds weight. You carry hopes of many, including mine. She met his eyes. Fire flickered across faces. And you, king who bent knee yet still bears crown of hearts. What do you want? He considered. Peace that lasts longer than a song. A hearth to sit by. A world where ghosts. My wolf, your past. Find rest. Is that world possible? Not without effort, he admitted. But we've faced worse odds. Silence stretched gentle. Frogs croaked from reed beds. Dragon's breath drifted like drifting smoke across water. They leaned together, foreheads touching, finding solace in shared quiet. In King's Landing, Randall Tarley's summons had roused more than council intrigue. Small folk thronged streets, rumor fueling dread that Queen of Ashes returned to torch city anew. The Red Keep gleamed under scaffolding repairs from post-war reconstruction. Newly installed scorpions lined walls, though their crews drilled with bolts tipped blunt. To appear defensive but not provocative, Lord Tarley assured ravens. As Drogon's shadow fell upon the capital, bells told a cautionary welcome. He circled above Blackwater Bay, vast sails jostling below. Daenerys guided him to a plateau outside city walls, refusing Tarley's invitation to stable within Dragon Pit. I do not cage my friends, she told the carriers. Jon dismounted beside her. Gold cloaks approached, helms polished, spears upright. Ser Balon Swan greeted, courteous but stiff. The hand awaits in throne room. You may retain sword, not dragon. Jon glanced at Drogon, who glowered but lay, wings mantled. Inside the city they walked unescorted save Swan. Crowds watched from balconies, faces pinched. Some hissed Kinslayer at Jon. Old rumors of Daenerys burning the Lannister army overshadowed by newer whispers yet still alive. Others tossed garlands of pale violets in Daenerys's path. Sign of hope revived. The throne room still bore scorch marks from Cersei's last stand. Newly crafted tapestries hung to hide cracked marble. Randall Tarley stood at dais foot, broad shoulders in austere breastplate. Beside him, Grand Maester Orwell, cheeks poachy, fingers heavy with rings. Council members arranged behind. Lord Grafton of Gulltown, Lady Celtigar of Claw Isle, Lord Peaseberry of Pottingfield, among others. Tarley bowed curtly. Your Grace. His tone balanced on razor edge between respect and challenge. We convene to discuss the realm's safety. Daenerys inclined head. Safety is our shared goal. Tarley motioned. Proceed. Orwell unfurled a scroll recounting incidents of draconic aggression. A Manderley fishing skiff singed when Noxeries chased gulls too low. A mill blaze near Last Hearth blamed on Ferrex's stray flame. Rumors of warm eggs hinting at uncontrolled proliferation. He concluded, therefore, the council petitions relocation of juvenile dragons to Dragonstone for monitoring by crown-appointed wardens. Daenerys replied measuredly, voice clear. Each incident addressed, reparations paid, safety protocols improved. My dragons have defended coasts from Ironborn raids, protected caravans along King's Road, fertilized fields with flame-tilled ash. Their presence yields net prosperity. Tarley's jaw flexed. Prosperity for North, perhaps. The Reach still rebuilds. He paced. How do you guarantee Dragonfire will not again ignite fields of grain? Jon stepped forward. As Lord Commander once, I vouch. Dragons obey Queen's command seamlessly. We log flight paths, supply progress reports. He produced Wolken's charts, Sam's statistics, crisp vellum sealed by Maester's sigil. By every measure, accidents decline. Tarley scanned pages, expression unreadable. He He tossed them to Orwell, who fumbled. Lady Celtigar interjected. "And these rumored eggs? How many?" 17 stones, Daenerys said evenly. "None hatched, guarded under lock." Lord Grafton smirked. "Stones today, drakes tomorrow." Jon's gaze hardened. Fear leaps faster than fact. Tarly raised a hand. "Enough parley." He faced Daenerys, eyes steely. "Swear here before crown and council that no dragon shall cross Mander nor Maidenpool without royal consent, that any new hatchling be delivered to Dragonstone for training under neutral oversight." Murmurs. Daenerys's heartbeat thundered. She saw chains, horns, pyres of old Valyria where dragons were bred for war. She recalled Doria Sand's hateful grin. A promise, once given, might become shackles. She spoke soft but unyielding. "I swear dragons will never again burn children to earn me a throne, but I will not surrender their freedom to fear." Tarly's hand fell to sword hilt. "Then realm cannot accept your reassurance." He nodded to guards flanking pillars. Crossbows loaded, bolts tipped with mirror-bright steel. Jon's sword rasped from sheath, but Daenerys touched his arm. "Diplomacy first," she murmured. She faced council. "Let each kingdom send observers to Winterfell. Walk among hatchlings, record behavior, recommend safeguards. We share knowledge. Only then, when trust blooms, shall we consider broader accords." Silence. Tarly's brow creased. Unexpected ally emerged. Orwell cleared throat. "Knowledge is bulwark of peace. I, for one, would welcome first-hand study." Lady Celtigar, whose island reaped trade from passing dragon-watched ships, nodded. "A delegation seems prudent." Pressure shifted. Lords weighed cost of open war against benefit of scholarship. Murmured assent grew. Tarly's eyes narrowed, but he sensed tide. "Very well," he said at length. "Delegation of 3 maesters, 2 knights, 1 septon shall depart within fortnight." Daenerys inclined head. "Winterfell opens gates." Jon sheathed longclaw, crossbows lowered, council adjourned. Outside, dusk-sunk city in lavender gloom. Drogon lifted head as they approached. Jon exhaled long. "That was close," he said. Daenerys watched towers where crossbow silhouettes lingered. Too close. They mounted. Drogon beat wings, salt wind whipping hair. As they soared north, city lights dwindled to embers. Jon wrapped arms around her. "What now?" he asked. "Now," she said, eyes on horizon where stars iced night. "We prepare for visitors, and for eggs that may wake beneath their gaze." Back in Winterfell, events spiraled faster than courier ravens. Tyrion's new brew hall collapsed when Noxeres landed atop roof chasing a moth, sending ale foaming through streets, drenching outraged merchants. Grey Worm's successor Captain Naka arrested 2 Sellswords lurking near Crypt Grate. Under questioning, they confessed allegiance to House Sterys, remnants of Black Sun seeking egg theft. Sansa enacted curfew. No non-resident beyond courtyard after moonrise. Unsullied doubled crypt guard. Still, the warm pulse inside Amethyst Egg intensified until Iron Chest felt like bread fresh from oven. Sam consulted ancient Valyrian texts. Wolkan performed soundings with brass resonator, ears pressed to shell for tremor patterns. A faint heartbeat thrummed. One midnight Bran wheeled into Crypt, unsummoned. His gaze rested on eggs. "Fire inside stone," he murmured. "They wake too soon." Tyrion blinked. "Too soon for what?" "For world yet unready," Bran replied. "Paths waver." Sudden rumble overhead. Ferrex roared. Footsteps thundered. Grey Worm scouts burst in. "Riders approach from east," one reported. "Not banners of council, Sellswords in black cloaks. 50, mounted, bearing crossbows." Sansa drew breath. "They come for eggs." Tyrion cursed. "Delegates not yet arrived, and already siege." Jon and Daenerys returned that dawn, Drogon weary but vigilant. News met them at gate. Jon strode to battlements. A black wave of horsemen loped across frost-glitter fields, smoke trailing from torches dipped in pitch. At their head flew banner of chain-ringed sunburst. Daenerys' eyes hardened. Black Sun reborn. Tyrion sighed. Because murderous cults never learn. They convened hasty war council. Davos outlined defenses. Scorpions restored atop walls. Archers with wildfire jars, thin, low yield, for night assault. Dragons for shock. Jon countered. Dragonfire near eggs risks premature hatch or worse, shell rupture. Bran, cryptic. Mother calls child with fire. Sibling answers with cry. Beware green flame and black sun.
Sam frowned.
Wildfire near eggs, explosive if superheated. We must keep siege outside arch range. Daenerys thought fast. I will ride Drogon beyond wall, draw their bows, break formation. Jon stays with Ferrex to defend eggs. Noxeres and Ereses patrol flank. Sansa protested. If they kill you, they cannot, Daenerys said fiercely. I have Drogon, but Jon placed hand over hers. Not alone. No, she agreed softly. Together. Night fell cobalt blue. The enemy camped half a mile out, pitch-soaked stakes circling perimeter. Their leader, a gaunt man with starburst scar across cheek, addressed his ranks. At dawn, sun rises black. Chains shall bind flame. His men chanted. Moon traveled slow arc. Inside crypt, eggs warmed further. A thin crack ticked across amethyst shell. Tyrion counted heartbeats. Here we go again, he muttered. Dawn flared blood red. A horn sounded enemy signal. Riders surged like locust tide. Ahead galloped 2 siege wagons dragging ballistae loaded with thick glass-cased bolts gleaming purple. Winterfell's gates opened. Drogon burst forth, wings casting eclipse. On his back, Daenerys brandished spear tipped with dragonglass. Behind, Noxeres and Ereses swept low over parapets, Ferrex bounding within. Arrows loosed, but dragons danced. Noxeres spat short violet arcs, igniting brush to force riders scatter. Ereses's pale flame fused enemy bowstrings to useless lumps. Drogon soared skyward, then stooped. Flames engulfed forward ballista. Molten rivulets hissed on packed snow. Yet second ballista fired. Bolt whistled, trailing chain of blackened iron. It struck Drogon's flank, penetrating scale. He roared agony. Chain coiled, tether anchored to wagon weight. Enemy riders hooped, yanking. Jon dashed along wall plank, shouting at Ferrex. The young drake leapt, wings pumping, but remained earthbound. Frustration snarled. Seeing Drogon falter, Noxeres dove to bite chain, but archers pelted him with pitch-tipped bolts. Violet flames sputtered. Daenerys clung to Drogon's neck, urging climb, but weight dragged downward. Another chain-tether bolt streaked, this one toward castle. It slammed into wall near crypt entrance. Chain shot across yard, snapping taut. Below, in crypt, amethyst egg split open with pop like thunder. A wail shrill newborn echoed stone. Heat blossomed. Sansa and Tyrion, guarding grate, recoiled as chest lid blew off, hot enough to warp iron. From within, a hatchling emerged, scales deep plum, eyes glowing gold, wings dripping membrane like molten glass. It shrieked, flame belched green tinged, wood beams caught, sprung too soon, unstable. Its fire volatilized fresh air into blast that shattered sconces. Cracks spidered across crypt arch. Tyrion yelled, "Get it out before roof collapses." Gray worms unsullied rushed, shields interlocked. The hatchling puffed, but flame flickered weak. Lungs not yet strong. They netted it with chain link draped in wet hides, carrying outside toward yard. In sky, Drogon still fought chain. Jon vaulted onto Ferrex's back. No saddle. "Fly," he commanded. Ferrex spread wings. This time he launched, momentum lifted by desperation. They spiraled upward, Jon clinging to Horn Ridge. Jon assessed if he severed chain near wagon, Drogon could free. He guided Ferrex in steep dive, blade drawn. Minuscule margin, ballista crew reloading. Ferrex roared. Flames sprang, but Jon signaled hold. Fire might ignite pitch barrels near chain anchor, risking blast under Drogon. Instead, Ferrex tucked wings, collided with wagon. Wood splintered, chain slackened. Jon leapt, hacked links glowing red from dragonglass contact. Metal parted. Drogon pulled free, clambering air, chain flailing like severed serpent. Crew scattered. Enemy leader spat curse, signaled retreat, but Winterfell archers poured arrows volley. Davos's catapults lobbed flaming pitch. Noxeres and Ereses herded stragglers into icy stream south of Ridge. On ground, the premature hatchling staggered, mewling. Sansa knelt, offering raw rabbit. Hissed but sniffed. Tyrion, soot-smudged, observed. "Name it," he ventured. Sansa considered. "Vesenira," she said, old tongue for winter's violet. Hatchling gulped meat, then spewed purple flame, harmless as candle. It nestled against Sansa's cloak. She blinked, surprised tenderness. Battle ended. Snowfields smoked. Surviving cultists fled to Shadowwood, but Grey Worm's outriders pursued. Drogon landed inside yard, chain wound trailing like dead snake. Daenerys slid down, ran to Jon as Ferrex touched ground. They met halfway, arms around each other. Words unnecessary. Above, pale sun rose on field of steam. Dragons roared chorus. Triumph, warning, birth song of age not yet known. Days later, after wounded mended and charred debris cleared, Winterfell hosted smaller council with unexpected members. Lady Rowan, repentant after witnessing Black Sun's savagery. Maesters Orwell, Luwin, and Valen, who arrived early to conduct study. Princess Arianne, curious about Vesenira's fate. The violet hatchling thrived in Godswood Pen, bonding oddly to Sansa, who visited bearing bowls of goat's milk thickened with egg. "A foster dragon for the north," Tyrion declared, to which she raised eyebrow but said nothing. Jon spoke at table. "We've seen foe use our fear against us. They chain and horn. Our answer cannot be heightened fear, but stronger bonds." Daenerys nodded. "So we established the Wardenship of Flame. Representatives from each kingdom residing in Winterfell to study, advise, and govern dragon affairs. Transparency breeds trust." Tarly's envoys concurred grudgingly, the alternative being endless skirmish. Agreement drafted, the Dragon Charter of Winterfell pledging shared oversight, ban on horn forges, serial numbering of Scorpion Ballista. Sam drafted preamble. "Let it be known that dragons, once the scourge of Westeros, are now its shield. Born of ice and fire, they belong to no single crown but to the breath of the realm." Bran wax-sealed with direwolf stamp. "Paths converge," he whispered. Night that charter signed, Daenerys wandered battlement. Cool breeze carried scent of pine and distant hearth. Jon joined. "5 dragons now," he said, watching Vesenira chasing falling snowflakes in yard below. She smiled, eyes reflecting starlight. 5 breaths of hope. "More to come. Perhaps," she said, "but they'll hatch in a world learning to live with wonder, not fear." He took her hand. "We'll see to that." She leaned into him. Dragons above circled moon, silhouettes weaving silver tapestry. Below, Winterfell glowed, a lantern in vast dark. People lounging by braziers, singing songs of new age. And in that moment, beneath canopy of night spangled bright, it felt as though even ghosts of old wars sighed and settled, content to watch dawn's improbable fire ignite horizons yet unseen.